Good morning, everyone. My name is Shailesh. Work for a company called 5G Solutions. Just recently onboarded as a co-founder for that same company as well. Let me begin with a simple question. Who does not have a problem with estimates and sprint plans today?
They're on the beach.
Good one. Well, yeah, we all have our problems, and there have been Excel sheets and multiple automated ways of estimating it, trying to, come out with a particular process of how it would be. And obviously, everybody has been struggling with that, trying to make it 90% and not even going 100% out there. So that's something which we were struggling in as well. So just to give you a background, so 5G is based out of Sunnyvale, California, as well as India. And most often, any estimates going out would be, hey, you guys are way above, or you don't know what are you trying to estimate, and so on and so forth used to be the question coming out most often back to us. Especially me, because I was the guy who was front-ending with the customer. How many of us are BizDev guys, by the way, here?
What?
Okay, business development? Okay, so 3. So obviously everybody who's been in the business development role understands what are the typical challenges when you have to defend a proposal and make sure that you're convincing that proposal good enough. Oh, sorry. So let's begin with the estimates and the push required. Sales or the customer breathing down your neck, want the estimate tomorrow or ASAP. That's something which everybody goes through. What are the budgetary estimates? Everybody wants to have an initial round before even they think of starting a project 6 months down the line. What are the different problems which we come out with? And sprint plans, and says tentative is fine if you want to share those inputs with me. It's something which would give me to sell it to my management to get the projects done. The dilemmas when anybody sits down on estimates, and maybe feel free to chime in if there are any more, because I'd love to hear your inputs as well. There are a lot of unknowns. You start asking questions. Most often you don't get answers. You have to assume certain stuff. What type of resources would you go ahead and plan for? You sort of cannot estimate which developer, teaming, tester, how are you actually aggregating all of that stuff? And to add on top of that, degree of difficulty, as in which platform are you using, how do you make sure different deployments are carried out the way you're planning it to be. So those are some of the challenges which always everybody plays around. I'll probably stop here and hear from you guys if you've come across any other challenges or dilemmas. Love to hear from you guys.
I think this kind of goes into like the degree of difficulty, but that mindset that this should be easy kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Especially when it's coming from the customer. Anybody else?
I think one challenge I see is that often the internal stakeholder, this particularly isn't the case in large organizations, they haven't really sold their vision to their boss.
Yeah.
So by the time you scope it, then they go back and it turns out the budget isn't really there.
Yes. Yeah. So we've been there. We work with a very large publishing company who has about 40 people team working, and every 6 months they have to come out with an estimate for next 6 months. What are the different projects they're going to fund, and so on and so forth. And I hear you. That's a big challenge, especially in a relatively medium-sized to a large organization. That's for sure.
One of the problems I run into very frequently is other people giving unrealistic estimates, and I have to then face that down and explain to them.
Yeah.
I get a lot of problems where I'm, for lack of a better word, competing with some kid out of a garage who's promising he can do it in a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
And of course, they never can.
Right.
They are promising cheaper, faster, and everything, and
True.
then trying to overcome that and convince them that don't believe that.
Yeah.
One man word but guys should all be shot.
Yeah. One man, anything.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true, and I think more often than not, you see those guys coming back to you because the other person has failed on those projects. But by the time you've lost the time and the opportunity as well, but that's something which. No, I've actually
And I
seen.
work in higher education.
Oh, okay.
And they have a tendency to, once they're driving towards the cliff,
Yeah.
they're going to hit the cliff.
Yep.
They've committed to that.
That's
and
true.
they're going to keep sailing right into it,
Yeah.
even when it's obvious how it's going to end.
Yeah, that's
They've
true.
already, the way budgets work, and I don't know if anybody else is in higher ed, but once they've committed to it and the budget's earmarked for it, they're going to spend it and let it fail.
Yeah.
And that's a shame.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah,
it's an industry
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, we got that
Yeah.
procurement thing.
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So let's build up a scenario here. Sales guys or somebody in the higher up comes up and say, "Hey, we've received the lead. I need an estimate. We need to respond back in the next 12 hours, whatever number of hours they would want to play around with." So what would you need? And I'm sure you would all, and we can add on to this as well. So you would need detailed estimate, the work breakdown structure of whatever deliverables you're planning to share. Come out with milestones, project overview, resource loading, sprint plans. Let me pause here. So when you share, or anybody shares, whether it's your internal management or with your customers, do you really go out with all these three, or do you just go with the first one and see if they come back and then give the other two? Do you go all?
Probably the latter.
So, how many of you actually look at all these three and in one shot? One. Okay. So I'm guessing rest of guys probably focus on these two or maybe the first one, and that's pretty much it with a budgetary amount and say, let me fish, see if that works, and if it does not, then I'm not wasting my time. But if it does, then I have to go and give the details out. So I'm just trying to drive certain pain points moving forward in each of these segments, and let me know if you see any more pain points if you have, and maybe I can add that. I may not have seen them. So pain points, inadequate analysis. So you have a site to be built, you have a roughly high level understanding of what you need to do. So let's pick an example here. I'm building an e-learning portal. I need these custom made, rest of the stuff is already available as part of Drupal. Now this does not come from the customer. This is your estimation guy who's actually sitting down and figuring out how much is out of box, how much do I need to create a custom module. But even prior to doing that, do you really have analysis of what are the sequence of going and considering those elements out? And it sort of ties it into the second part where the incorrect estimates are if your base is something which is not right, then your subsequent amounts are going to be bad calculation anyways, because you're not considering that as the base one. Lot of times you have some amount of buffer. Everybody plays around with those numbers because you want to make sure whatever unknowns have to be covered there. And from a complexity factor, how many of the development effort should I consider 8? Should I consider 16? Should I consider 32? What's the range of your simple, medium, and complex scenarios which you're trying to figure out? Anything to do with detailed estimates? Any folks who are trying to do some other ways of figuring out how do I capture details? Okay, again, move on to the next one. Deliverable predictions, pain point. Most often we are doing manual calculations. Even if you're using our Excel sheet and we've done scripting behind that and figuring out, hey, to install it's going to take 8 hours, blah, blah, blah. When you actually sit in front of a customer or think about what environment are they using it, you may want to figure it out, or maybe not 8 hours, it can be done much lesser. But if there is a complex scenario, then you may want to add. So hence you actually end up doing manual arbitration in your Excel sheets, and the script which you wrote earlier may not be relevant anymore, because when you actually wrote it earlier, you had a different thought process, but you passed on that Excel sheet to someone else, and then he doesn't have an idea of who's doing what. Why would I use this as a baseline? So that's something which I'm guessing most of us are facing that as a challenge. Only one type of estimation. So a lot of times when you try and sell to biz dev guys and say, here is a range, and the guy says, no, that doesn't work. I need a certain amount. And then you end up giving a more optimistic approach, give it out to him, and then that he takes it to the customer. This formula, obviously, everybody would be using this 3-pointing estimation technique, most often being used. But sometimes it can be based on the business requirement. How much do you want to go with which estimates? And that's where you're trying to play around with. Then goes milestones. You start considering your work breakdown structures into, again, manually configuring based on either resources you have, timelines you have, and cost, of course, is the other one which would be added onto it. Project overview. So from a aggregation of data, I was talking to John about, he's been trying to do for the last 10 years, trying to figure out how many spreadsheets would be there. And yes, you would have an estimation sheet for project A, estimation sheet for project B, which project A might have been hit on the line as far as the deployment is concerned, but project B may not have. So you're trying to see the best practices, trying to pull that out and put that into this spreadsheet which you're trying to create. And that's where things go wrong, because you really sometimes are not looking at details what happened in the previous project or project A. So that's a pain point which I've seen a lot of times happening. Now comes the most interesting part, the resource loading factor. So in order to come out with a realistic milestone, you also have to figure out not only hardware but people who are going to work on this project. That resource loading factor, how do you plan that out? And that's something which a lot of people have been struggling to. How many here are using Agile from a deployment or project management perspective? So half of the room. Maybe we probably are the odd one out. 99% of our projects are all Agile, and that's one thing which sort of drove us to make sure that when we go out to a customer, he has the entire plan in front of him. Resource loading, sprint plans, how is the loading factor working out on those different aspects, and this is actually more of a and most often you would be using a project, Microsoft project or some other tool which is there, again a manual effort, put in the names and then start driving your resource factor, automation, trying to automate that as much as possible. Let's look at what are the possible solutions. Need one tool, ideally, which would help me expedite estimation process and also automate sprint plans. and I'll talk about this a little more later. Leverages the knowledge, expertise, experience gained by working on different projects or diverse projects, because especially if it's domain specific, it may tend to vary. We work on healthcare and publishing domains, and we've realized that healthcare projects can be really diverse, as simple as a patient sign-up form to actually building a full-fledged application where it needs to integrate with the EHRs and EMRs of the world. And how do you fine-tune those elements is something which is very important. Trying to create a template out of it also is an important aspect. Projects to be split into Drupal-specific elements, and this is sort of an input from our Excel sheets. Typically, we know what elements are we trying to install or add as part of our project, and can we create a tool which can actually support this. This one equips us with ample proficiency in estimating projects. Now, this is sort of a repetition of the previous bullet points. And a wish list would be, over a period of time, it enables you to learn how do I improve on my estimates, because while you're trying to create all this, trying to automate from your manual effort, it should obviously figure out if it can self-learn if possible. So that's sort of a long way to go, but still a wish list out there. Everybody, I think, not everybody, maybe most of us, focus on guesstimating and say, hey, this project worked out for me. Maybe it's similar ballpark when a pre-sales guy or an engineering guy is in front of the customer, he has, based on his past experience, comes out with and throws a number out at the customer. That's why I've stopped taking these guys in front of the customer. Okay, so let's look at what we ended up building. This is sort of an in-house tool as of now. I don't have a good internet connection. That's why I took a snapshots and started creating. I wish I was able to show you a live site, which is there, but the net connection is not very good. Sort of a dashboard where all customer names, their project names, what are the different categories, can I view those which have already been either implemented or finished, or can I edit that? That's where most of us actually go and pick up our old Excel sheet, hit the, start editing there itself, compile it, and send it out to the sales guys or whoever is managing the projects. So what we did was list of projects, then a template, essentially. So if it's a corporate website, there is a different template, commerce side, different template, and so is the business side. And can I go ahead and create another one? Essentially something which we added that as part of the feature. Now let me give you a background where this came from. We've been in business for about 5 years, 5.5 actually, to be precise, and came out with, there was a time last year where we had literally 2-3 leads coming every week to make sure that we can provide estimates to guys. And in Dublin, I believe, DrupalCamp Dublin is when I started interacting with folks and say, hey, are you facing the similar problem? And most often guys would say, yes, this is something which we've been facing problems. So we said, okay, can we look at how do I build this in-house so that at least my guys, we can scale things up faster. Now, how much is the accuracy? We'll get to know in next few months once we start finishing our projects, because that's where we started using this tool to estimate projects and sharing it out with the customer. So the first screen, as you hit into the screen, there's a dashboard available. Once you add a new project, you can actually add a new task. Give a name. This is sort of a replication of an Excel sheet, if I may, a single row, but it's more user-friendly. Guys who are averse to Excels, can probably use this better. Also, one thing which I've realized is lately, last month and a half, is I share this with our customer and say, why don't you go ahead and enter details, especially guys who are large companies, understand Drupal, have to sell it internally, so on and so forth. So we have this training video which we share it with them and say, go ahead and take a look at this tool. Here is your login credentials. Play it out as much as possible, and then let's figure out what's the budget. And if you need any help and questions, we are obviously happy to help you there. And that's prompted to these sort of workflow, if I may, on how do I make sure that it'll work out. So the aspect which we are trying to do is add as much details as possible, and then you have to play around with complexity factors, how much hours are we going to use, and so on and so forth.
So, Shailesh,
Sure.
what's the level of granularity that you consider a task for this purpose? Like, let's say I was building a branch locator for a bank.
Yeah.
Would that be one task, or would that be decomposed into several different things?
It'll be decomposed into multiple factors. So, how many performance is not the right way, but what modules, not even modules, features are you actually trying to work out, and then can you break it down? And that's something which we're trying to break down. In fact, this screen might give you a more aspect. So, theme implementation, homepage. So basically, every page, wherever you're trying to add analysis design, development effort, and if I scroll down, it actually adds on to QA, deployment, and so on and so forth.
I'm sorry, do you have this available online somewhere? Because it's a little.
It is. If you have your business card, let me know and I'll share it with you. There is a demo version. In fact, let me try this. I'm not sure if. Oh, perfect. Is that visible? No. Oh, need to move it here.
It's okay. I'll get
Okay.
I'll do that.
Fair enough. Right. So it's available online. You can actually go ahead and enter details, and I'll talk about this a little more. So can you break it down into different efforts, development, QA, deployment, support, all of that is already laid out in this tool. Estimation summary, which is, so we looked at estimation breakup, the next one is estimation summary. What are the different phases within that, and how many hours, weeks, months are we trying to plan things out? It sort of gives you a phase-wise effort out there. Breaking it down to work items, so sort of answering your question, how granular can you go into describing those details, and it's up to you, because whoever is estimating would want to make sure that I've covered as many aspects as possible, and that's what we're trying to do here. So, things like ad, subscription, calendar, what are the estimated total number of hours which we plan to use. A project summary. Now, this is something which, from a budgetary standpoint, number of hours, can I be more optimistic, realistic? What is the breakdown? And if I click on this, it will actually go down to breakup of all these elements. Go to the estimation breakup actually. Now comes, so far I think whatever I've been talking is more of a in-house Excel or updated Excel, last 5, 6 years, 7 years, trying to figure out, it's sort of there. But now can I take this to the next level and start generating some sprint plans? I think that's where the we had to consider a lot of time, because algorithms on how do I use 25% of a project manager and a 50% of a QA, add that into my sprint plans from a resource loading factor, and then create a sprint plan based on that. It required a lot of deliberations. I mean, we spent good 2 to 3 weeks at least talking about that, and then literally, so the coding part was relatively easier, but making sure that when I create a sprint plan, it actually should be a sprint plan, not something else. So that's something which we started working on. So you enter your resources, developers, QA, and if there are any others, so add that as part of and then you can actually do a expertise level. Do I need a senior guy who has a lot of experience, or a fresher would be workable, and so on and so forth. Then you create a sprint plan based on your resource which you're working on. You're basically taking a 2-week sprint here and then going ahead with your deployment and sharing this. So that's the most important part. Can I go ahead and share this with my customer, because he gets a view of all aspects? When I say all aspects, how granular are you trying to be? How many pages? Have you really considered that? And one of the points somebody mentioned was that it's very easy to do a project, because that's a perception they have. When they start looking at these details, okay, so there are so many other things which have to be considered which were not earlier. And that's where their perception starts changing, because they can actually go ahead and edit these things if they feel, no, this much should take 8 hours. And this is obviously a tech customer. It's not a business or a non-tech customer, essentially. Can I go ahead and edit sprint? Yes. There is a low estimate, high estimate sprint. Can I convert that into a PDF? This feature is not working right now, but that's something which we plan to add pretty soon, and then share it with the, send that PDF out to the customer. Just a business, nothing to do with the points out here, but we're just trying to figure out, is there a really business need out there or not? And should I invest that effort to build such a tool? And we said, okay, let's do some background research prior to that. So we looked at Gartner reports, McKinsey reports, and we figured out that yes, this seems to be a challenge, and there are hardly any tool which combine both for at least Drupal projects. There are a lot of tools out there which manage automated estimation and to an extent sprint plan as well. But very specific to Drupal, is there something which we can play around with, and that's where we started working on that. Yeah. Any questions? I am way ahead of my time. Okay.
So outside of the summary tool you have there, do you have like a reporting tool for like graphs and charts to kind of visually show that? Or
No,
just have
no.
anything?
This is more of a, so it was my pain point, being a guy who was facing the customer, facing the music, and was trying to solve my problem with this tool. And obviously now the customer is coming out with, hey, can you integrate with Jira? Because then take that, put it into the system, and I can actually start planning. So yes, those are sort of our wish list, if I may, and probably version 2, depending upon how much effort can I fund this, because as of now, I'm not making any money out of it, for sure. And that's where, so go ahead.
Yeah, so that's my next question is,
Sure.
can we get this?
Yes. So I look at this in a different way. So it's when you build a product, and this is sort of a heading into that direction.
Yeah.
You need beta testers for that, and I've already shared that with few of my customers who are actually all using it. And yes, that's something which I would be happy to share. Now, if and when, I don't know, I don't see any foreseeable future trying to build a cost to it or from a charge perspective, but there have been questions being raised in-house. By when should you think we should start making money out of it? And not for 6 months for sure. But if you want access, we'll be happy to share those credentials with you. So,
What is it? Is it written in Drupal?
Yes.
So you built
It's
it?
a custom module, full PHP and Drupal combined. So,
Okay.
Is it based off the project management module?
I wouldn't know that, so maybe I'll have to ask the guys who actually build it.
Have you gotten far enough along with it yet that you have quantifiable results of how it's changing your process?
Yes, so as I said, we started leveraging this for our customers, and those projects are about to end. So far, we've been in sync as far as estimation and actual comparison is concerned. But then I think the trick is support when it actually hits after going live. So we still yet to see that aspect yet.
Experience, since you are using the tool, what would be the average of success on what you estimate with the tool previous to when you estimated manually or with a style spreadsheet or something like that?
So two things there. One, we can actually share this with our customer. So he can see whether we are tracking based on where we are on the deliverables aspect. So that gives him a comfort factor that, hey, looks like they're on track. So that from that perspective, the customer is happy, we are happy, it's a good thing. The other aspect which is more important is there are guys who are sitting on the fence, should I be estimating a project or not? They have opened up a little more and say, hey, maybe I can take a look at estimating this particular project, and then somebody else can fine tune it if required. So in-house, we are getting more guys who can now take that risk, so to say, to go ahead and estimate those projects, and over a period of time sort of learn through the processes where we are headed to. So did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, on the 5G website, right, it says that you have the estimation tool there.
Yes.
And it says that you can get it free for 45 days or
Yeah.
45-day trial,
Correct.
but then you just said something about probably not
Yeah,
for 6 months.
it's people who are landing on our website. Just wanted to make sure that somewhere down the line they might be ready to be paying this.
Uh-huh.
That's the reason why it is.
Okay.
But for now,
so if
all
we
of our
wanted to
guys.
submit our information, can we still do it through
Yes,
there?
go
or?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
In fact, that'll be easier because it'll be faster.
All right, so if anybody's curious, it was 5g.com /expertise /estimation -tool.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I'm curious, do you we can estimate, or take a shot at estimating our work and our tasks. Do you accommodate or account for client-side tasks? For example, data entry to some things they might be wanting. A lot of times we put the QA on them to sign off and say, yes, we like what you've done, and that way they own the approval process.
Right.
Do you normally account for that and give estimates to that, and do you struggle with that?
No, we don't. We haven't received any scenario where the customer is asking us to do that. I think the reason is most of our customers have been with us for a couple of years, and that's where it's sort of an understood statement that who's going to do QA, who's going to do dev, so it's sort of laid out already. Any other questions?
It seems like the estimate is after discovery process or before discovery process?
Good question. So it's after discovery process, yes.
Do you estimate the time spent on the discovery process?
Yes. Yes, we do. Typically, we don't go beyond 2 to 3 weeks of the discovery process, so it's fairly known factor, so to say, and estimating for 2-3 weeks is not a big deal. So,
Do you typically do those as separate SOWs or task orders? Because that's
the discovery process, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
That's the problem I often find myself in, is when the sales guys will go sell something and the client wants to buy it as one phase. So
Yeah,
it's,
right.
Build me a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's happening lately a lot, I would say, where people are asking for discovery phase and say, in fact, it's interesting. One of our customers actually said, do you have to bill it for me, to me, the discovery process? And I said yes. But most often, I think it's sort of understood that it'll be built. So
Well, I'm glad you said that because that's one of the things I find a lot. I find that they do not feel that should be a billable thing.
Right.
And yet they still want estimates and they still want me to give them pricing and things like that.
Right.
And then you get a lot of surprises. You get, your estimates are always going to be off because of that.
Definitely.
Does everybody else in the room, if I may, have a similar situation like that? Do you find people reluctant to bill for the discovery process, or
We typically,
are reluctant to?
I would just say, it typically comes out of your biz dev estimation process. So when you're talking to them,
it's a sales cost.
yeah, you quickly will decide, and we've done this both ways. If it's kind of a pretty standard build, we'll just tack it into the front end of the project.
Yeah.
We realize we're going to have to do some discovery, but it's kind of standard discovery. But during that sales process, if we determine that there's some complex things here and they just can't answer the questions we're asking about getting an estimate together, then we'll usually step back and say, listen, you have some complex requirements here, and in order to get you, we can give you a big, fat, squishy number that's going to be in our favor,
Right.
or if you want a tight number, we'll break the discovery phase into a separate upfront phase, which will be a billable with a deliverable of a requirements document that we will then base our estimate on our own requirements document you paid for. And then the spin we've also put on it is like, but at this point you have this requirements document, so you could actually shop it around. We may not be the guy who's winning the bill. And that actually happened to us once. We gave them the requirements document and they went with somebody else on the build. But we were glad they did after dealing with
I would agree 100%. I never have any difficulty finding people who are willing to pay for discovery. The challenge is getting them to break it off. They want the estimate before you do the discovery.
Exactly.
Yes. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why we started off this, because you're kind of giving them a range. This is a more optimistic, pessimistic sort of an approach, and they know what their budgetary number is. And based on that, then the discovery phase can be part of the project. And that worked out much better because we are actually sharing the whole sprint plan. They see the deliverables which are coming out every 2 weeks. What is going to be delivered to me? So if it's a non-tech guy, it's sort of difficult to defend this. But most often, if there is a IT manager or somebody, he gets it immediately and say, yeah, this will work.
And the way we combat pushback on the discovery phase is we take it as a challenge to be able to find questions to ask that they can't answer, that they don't know the answers to. And when they start seeing that they don't know the answers to questions that we certainly don't know the answer to that we're going to have to figure out, they become a lot more open to the discovery process.
That's reasonable person.
Yes. Well, 80% of them are reasonable.
When you say reasonable, let me reiterate, I work in higher education. It's not real prevalent, but honestly, it is something in my world that I have to deal with is exactly what you said. I can do that, and we've been kind of eating the cost, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but we try to recoup that later in the estimate. More detailed discovery. So there's an initial discovery, and then there's a spec gathering. We kind of reclaim that because exactly what you said, we put it together, and then they go to that person out of their garage with all the work that we did to enumerate and list all that stuff out, and then this person's going to promise them, and that's been happening.
It's also an early warning indicator of the customer from hell. So,
well,
sometimes it's like,
welcome to higher ed.
maybe I dodged that bullet.
It gives you a little try before you buy kind of opportunity if you can convince them to pay for the discovery phase and break it off to larger projects.
And I think that's a challenge in higher ed too, is because they're going to, whatever estimate you give, they have to go get it approved as a one-step. I can't do a two-step. They don't like that. They want to know how much it's going to cost so I can take it to the board and get all the approvals in one chunk. So my method I've been trying with mixed success is reclaiming some of it
we've had the same challenge in the nonprofit space now that I've kind of moved into that. In the commercial space, it was easier because we were dealing with more nimble kind of organizations. But in the nonprofit space, you're typically dealing with somebody who's part of an advisory board, and then they have to get it to the advisory board, and then the advisory board has to take it to the board of directors, and then the board of directors, you know, and then there's usually some kind of executive director, you know, dog and pony.
Yeah, and they assume you are a tech expert, so you should be able to give me a right estimate.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
And usually they're very unsophisticated environments that aren't tech savvy.
I was actually about to point that out. And I've seen even in very large, like Fortune 100 organizations that sell billions of dollars worth of stuff, I've gone into discovery meetings and had them say, "You guys are the experts, and you tell us."
Yes.
And to some degree, that's true, though. I always be our BAs about this. You should never go into a meeting without a point of view. Your point of view may be completely wrong, and you need to state that at the beginning, but you should have done your research, and you should come in thinking, here's what you've described. Based on what I know, here's how I would go after it. Am I at all in the right ballpark? And usually they'll tell you you're wrong. But then they'll give you all the details that if you had just asked them, what do you want to do? They'd be like, I don't know, you know.
A big number typically get people really smart about their requirements pretty quick.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's another tactic you use. You just put something out there, and you put it in the context of, you know, we don't. You got to do this one way or another, with or without us. So there's no pressure that it's got to be us, but you're going to have to answer this question whether it's us or the next guy behind us to put this proposal together. So you might as well figure it out with us.
Sure.
Well, I'm thinking the key there is that by getting them to pay for the discovery, you provided them with a value-added product at the end of that discovery that they can then use to outline a better path for the project that they're really interested in getting implemented. So the value-add sell is key there.
So the tech guys, it makes sense. The non-tech guys don't get it. It's that's my experience. They don't get the value add at all. They just assume that this is part of your project, and you know that's how it will work. So that's the challenge which at least I am facing. I'm not sure others are facing.
We run into some that have to be packaged together like that, and you have to be really explicit about your expectations and just say what you're going to deliver and put some kind of tight lines on it about what the budget and your breakdown is. And when you get into discovery and you have that aha moment and they go, well, we have this custom poorly documented API and you've got to integrate it with it, you go, well, that's a 2,000 more hour effort and that's out of the budget. So
yeah, in certain cases, in fact, we've gone ahead and built a REST API for them. So that's additional effort way out there.
Yeah, you know, so but that leads up to you have to be able to have that conversation about this is what we understood from our initial conversation. This is the amount of effort we have to address that. So you got a decision to make.
Sure. So I'm kind of curious. It sounds like a lot of people here are dealing with like larger companies and that sort of thing. But what about like smaller businesses? Is it kind of applicable to the kind of business that maybe doesn't have all their accounting together right at that moment? Are y'all still sending these summaries and talking to people like this? Or are you just like, no, wait until you get it all together and then we'll start working?
Yeah, so I see your point from an overwhelming perspective. If you share all this big Excel sheet and say, it's going to cost you this much, and no, this is probably out of my league. That can be a reaction which they can come out with. We've had a couple of them, but at least the flip side has been, oh, these guys are really thorough. They know what they're trying to do, so that helps, and so that sort of played in our favor in a way. But depends on. See, at the end of the day, it's all about breaking down into different tasks and sharing it with them. It's the same for whether it's a small or large organization.
Kind of that knowledge is power kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah.
And I think as a smaller organization, you might actually be able to benefit from it more, because by doing this the first time, you'll be able to reuse it from piece to piece because your projects will be more similar to each other.
Yeah.
If I look back on where I work now, we used to do a lot of small projects that were all very cookie cutter, same thing. Now we work with a lot of larger clients, which are so far out there, we need huge estimation processes like this because each one is completely different from each other. But if I look back at where we were 4 years ago working on smaller projects, we could probably take 3/4 of what we were estimating and reapply it to the next site.
Sure. Well, thank you.
That's a holy grail right there.
Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate coming in.